So I thought we would take a look at the tarot cards today in Kabbalah. And it's important to understand that the tarot cards are directly tied to Kabbalah. For example, this is the Bota deck that you're looking at right here, which is a very popular deck. The card we're going to be taking a look at is the Fool card and its symbolism and its relationship to creation and astronomy. According to popular opinion, and popular opinion is usually wrong about things, um, they assign this meaning of fool to the card, thinking that it is just a foolish person. And what what they're missing is that all of creation, from the very top all the way down to the bottom, is all one being. It is all one being that branches out all the way down into physical reality. So there is no separate fool compared to something else. There is no separation. But what Fool tells us about is it tells us something about creation. Because what actually happens, just as Manly P. Hall describes, is at the very top you have this manifestation that happens. And so God, the Godhead, projects creation and then inhabits it. So it's not separate from creation. All of creation is part of it, but it projects it from itself and it inhabits it in everything, whether it's the universe or you and I or everything else. And so when we take a look at, we can take a look at this right here. This kind of gives us a good understanding of the way this works. So all the way up here at the very top, when you see this tetragrammaton, this is where everything starts, and then it branches out and it moves down this triangle. So the very top part, this point that you see here, and you got to remember that it's almost like you have four trees of life. You have one here, another one stacked on top of that, another one stacked on top of that. This one down here is where physical manifestation happens. So if you can imagine four men stacked on top of each other, just like what you see right here, this is what you have. But this part up here is where everything projects from. And as it projects, it inhabits this whole tree that you see right here. So when we take a look also, we see point, line, plane, and then the tetrahedron, which is the first solid, which is associated to physical manifestation. Also, when we take a look at these charts right here, in just about every ancient religion that you'll find, whether it is Qabalah, the Egyptian mysteries, Hinduism, Buddhism, what you'll notice is that in each one of these, you'll see that they are numbered from creation, and it kind of moves down this tree. And what you'll see is that in this first one, 1 corresponds to Kether. But before that, you kind of have pre-creation. And pre-creation exists in what we see in the ancient Hindu religions, and as far as creation goes. You have a creation that exists that starts with mind. It starts with a spiritual nature that's invisible, something that you can't see. And then that moves down into something that's called mind, and you still can't see that either. And then from there, it moves down into creation, which is something that's manifestation of itself. And in each case, it goes from the more subtle to the more dense or the most solid. And so when it comes to physical creation, what we kind of see is a mirror of what's actually happening in the invisible worlds, but coming into manifestation in the physical world. So if you want to get an idea of a mirror reflection of what you're actually seeing in the invisible world, then you would take a look at the nebula, and the nebula would kind of give you a hint as to what you would be seeing just beyond the veil. So, so for the Egyptians, when we take a look at these, the tree of life, for example, the tree of life shows us certain numbers. And you notice they're numbered 1, 2, 3. Doth is not normally numbered. And we have 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, and then down here at the very bottom 10, when this corresponds to Earth. So we have Earth, we have Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. This is might be the fixed stars. And then up here at the very top is nebula. And if you see the way that these things fade in, what they're representing here is they're representing nothing, and nothing kind of condensing into something which becomes a divine spark, which is what you see right here. And it's also called the first swirlings. It's called the first swirlings because Kether, which represents number 1 right here, is represented as the nebula. So when we take a look at creation, we're seeing something that happens just as it comes into creation, and this is exactly what we see in the Hindu texts as well. Now when we come back over here to the Fool card, which is what we're going to be taking a look at today, we're going to look at the real meaning behind what the Fool represents. Notice his symbol right here, the Aleph symbol, and notice what we see right here. We have Kether, and then we have Aleph, we have the Fool right here. So we have this first spark of initial creation, which is the nebula, and then that nebula is moving out into creation, creating the stars and the various planets of the solar system. So when we take a look at the Fool card and his number 0, and also if you take a look at the Magician, see the Magician here? The Magician's located right here as well. So these top 3 cards, you can see that they correspond to the very top of creation. So the Sun is behind the Fool here, and he's moving away from the Sun. So what this actually is symbolizing, and it is symbolizing creation, that the Godhead is projecting creation and inhabiting it. And this is a move from that Sun, the invisible spiritual Sun, moving into creation, which is Kether, and then the Fool card zigzagging down from wisdom to Bina, all the way down the tree, all the way down to earth. So we also see in this particular card a very interesting symbol. We have a little dog here, and we have the sky right here. Now let's take a look at symbolism right here. When we take a look at the symbolism, the nebula represents the very first point. When we take a look at the Fool card, we can see that we have Orion and we have Sirius. And we know that the Egyptians in their pyramid texts, they said, "Lo, Osiris has come as Orion," which means that the Godhead has began creation in Orion. He came forth as Orion. And so when we take a look inside the Orion constellation, we can see Barnard's Loop, which starts right here at the Orion Nebula and spirals out to create the whole constellation. This right here is Sirius, his little dog right next to him. So what this is actually representing, and we know that the Orion constellation was the very most important constellation in the ancient Egyptians. And then we also take a look at the name Orion, and we can see that if we take a look in the Bible, Kessel, which is Orion, also represents the Fool. It also represents the heavenly constellation, Kessel. Right here, Kessel, Orion. So when we take a look at the Fool card, the Fool also translates as Orion. When we take a look at the Fool, we see that this is Orion and this is Sirius. And then when we take a look at where he's located on the tree of life, he is located at that point that just comes into existence. And that is this area right here. So we have this condensing that happens from this giant sphere. And this is still the invisible world. And then to us, what we see is the first point within inside the circle. And those are called Brahmandas, or mundane eggs, and those are referred to as nebulas in the ancient Hindu texts. And that's why the crown represents the nebula. And we've seen that the nebula, being Kether, is also what we see painted in all these various cathedrals. The artwork that's in all these cathedrals, it represents the high altar. Because when manifestation happens in the universe, when we think of consciousness, it moves down from the head down to the feet. So in each situation, we start at the Godhead, and then it zigzags down the tree. That's why you see the human figure right here, the cross right on his forehead here, and this represents Doth, or knowledge. So this whole area that you see right up here is kind of like a Celtic knot, which represents the nebula. So we have the Fool moving down, coming down from this sun behind him into creation. And he is represented by Orion. And Orion is symbolic of the way consciousness happens as it moves from the invisible spiritual realms and down into what we see into physical creation. And so that is the real meaning of the esoteric science behind the Fool card. It doesn't have anything to do with just some foolish person. Because when you take a look at the tree of life, he's located above wisdom on the tree. He's also kind of the joker of the deck. He can be anything in the deck because he is the point where everything manifests from. He manifests Kether, and everything comes from Kether and moves down the tree, just like that triangle that we saw. So everything manifests from the invisible. So he represents every card in the deck, really. So anyways, that is what this represents. The symbolism that you see behind it, the name that you see behind it represents Orion. And that first point of creation that comes into existence, Kether, is the symbol of a man whose head is in right profile. That is actually the magical symbolism behind Kether. And that's exactly what we see when we take a look at the Orion Nebula. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. That is the real meaning behind the Fool card, as shown in the Bible, as shown in the symbolism here, and as shown on the Tree of Life. So you guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon.